各位朋友，大家好。为了让大家在我们的节目当中能够掌握第一手的新闻资料呢，我们又推出了一个新的产品，就是把以后美国联邦政府，包括白宫、包括国务院或者其他的部门一些记者会，我们认为有价值的，我们花点时间把它做成中文字幕，提供给大家。大家如果有时间呢，不妨花点心思看看美国政府的这些主要官员他们在新闻发布会上讲的一些内容，那我想就可以尽大可能的避免大家受一些假新闻的影响。那么今天呢，先跟大家推出一个川普执政100天在白宫举行的记者会，主角除了白宫的新闻发言人之外呢，还有美国的财政部长贝森特。大家先看完之后，修杰再跟大家评论一下贝森特讲的内容当中呢，最重要的是什么。
Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump. Since his first day in office, President Trump has focused on defeating the Biden inflation crisis, bringing down the cost of living, and making the United States the best place in the world to do business, invest, create jobs, and innovate. And President Trump's efforts are working. 345,000 jobs have already been added since the start of President Trump's term. Last month's jobs report saw nearly 100,000 more jobs than economists predicted, and it was the fourth highest month for private payroll growth in the past 2 years. 9,000 manufacturing jobs have been added to the economy already. This is a sharp contrast to the 6,000 manufacturing jobs that were lost each month in the final 2 years of the Biden administration. Immediately upon taking office, President Trump blocked all of the unfinalized Biden-era rules, saving Americans more than $100 billion, or $2,100 per family of 4 over the next decade. Press is not talking nearly enough about the positive impact of President Trump's deregulation campaign. And investments from the biggest companies and countries in the world are pouring in under this president. So far, total investment commitments under the Trump administration have reached more than $5 trillion, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $500 billion from NVIDIA in AI infrastructure, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in AI infrastructure as well. All of these investment commitments are estimated to generate at least 451,000 new high-paying jobs for American workers and families. At this point, President Trump has secured more investments in the United States of America in 100 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years. Tomorrow, the president will host CEOs and leaders from several companies that have made these investments to tout their historic commitments to our country and encourage others to follow suit. More than 100 countries have already come to the table looking to offer more favorable terms for America and our people. There has never been a president who has created his own leverage like this president, and we are just getting started. Republicans in Congress are getting very close to passing President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, which will include the largest tax cuts in American history, strong border security measures, major military advancements, dramatic deregulation, and common sense spending reforms. As President Trump has said before, the best is yet to come. I want to pass it off to our incredible Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who is here today, and we will open it up to questions.
Thanks so much for being here. I have a question for Secretary Bessent. On tariffs, the president said over the weekend that we are hoping that maybe tariff revenues could replace income tax. But we also keep hearing about the deals that the administration is pursuing. So my question is, what is the White House's ultimate objective here? Do you want to have long-term tariff revenue or deals that might reduce those tariffs?
I think it's a combination of both. So we're going to take in long-term tariff revenue. We put a process in place. We have 18 important trading relationships. We will be speaking to all of those partners, or at least 17 of them, over the next few weeks, many of them have already come to Washington. What President Trump is referring to is the ability for tariff revenue to give income tax relief. And I think there's a very good chance that we will see this in the upcoming tax bill. The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all those immediately.
So you think that there is a role for significant tariff revenue in U.S. fiscal policy?
I think that it is something that got put away a long time ago, and I think that tariffs will bring back American manufacturing and generate substantial revenues.
On manufacturing, we've seen some pretty grisly surveys this month from the Philly Fed, which saw the biggest drop since May of 2020, and the Dallas Fed, similar plunging outlook, poor shipping orders. What are American manufacturers not understanding about your push for onshoring in the U.S.?
Well, I think I was in the investment business 35 years, and I learned to ignore the survey data and look at the actual data, and the actual data has been quite good. The job data is good. Americans keep spending. And as Caroline said, we have these incredible commitments to bring manufacturing back on shore with record investment by domestic corporations and foreigners who want to come into the U.S.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The Chinese continue to say that the U.S. and China are not engaged in any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. You recently said you've talked to your counterpart, but more about, quote, traditional things like financial stability. So can you clarify, is the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom, but I think that over time we will see that the Chinese tariffs are unsustainable for China. I've seen some very large numbers over the past few days that show if these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly, and even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs. So remember that we are the deficit country. They sell almost 5 times more goods to us than we sell to them. So the onus will be on them to take off these tariffs. They're unsustainable for them.
And they are saying you guys are not talking about it. So is that true?
Look, they have a different form of government. They're playing to a different audience. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, again, of who's talking to whom. But as I said, I believe for the Chinese, these tariffs are unsustainable.
Thank you so much for being here this morning. You've talked about the importance of giving investors certainty when it comes to the market, yet the Trump administration is continuing to negotiate several complex trade deals in a very sort of compressed time frame. When do you expect you'll be able to give the market some certainty around those deals? Do you have a deadline? Is it the 90-day pause? What are we looking at here?
Good question. And I think one thing that has been a little disconcerting for the markets is, President Trump creates what I would call strategic uncertainty in the negotiations. So he is more concerned about getting the best possible trade deals for the American people. We had 4 years of bad deals for decades of unfair trading, and we are going to unwind those and make them fair. What we are doing is we've created a process. I think the aperture of uncertainty will be narrowing, and as we start moving forward announcing deals, then there will be certainty. But certainty is not necessarily a good thing in negotiating.
Mr. Secretary, last night there were reports on the administration sort of walking back a little bit on the auto tariffs. Can you sort of just elaborate on that decision there and what we can expect going forward, and why sort of the shift in those auto tariffs?
Well, President Trump has had meetings with both domestic and foreign auto producers, and he's committed to bringing back auto production to the U.S. So we want to give the automakers a path to do that quickly, efficiently, and create as many jobs as possible.
Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Secretary. Back on China, does the administration anticipate supply chain shocks or supply shocks coming now that cargo shipments from China are significantly down? And if so, are there plans in the process of how to address that?
I wouldn't think that we would have supply chain shocks, and I think retailers they have managed their inventory in front of this. I speak to dozens of companies, sometimes daily, but definitely weekly, and they know that President Trump is committed to fair trade and have planned accordingly.
And then second question, can you outline the timeline for when you think some of these deals, particularly with your Asian countries like India, Japan, South Korea, you may have an announcement?
I'm glad you brought up our Asian trading partners and allies. They have been the most forthcoming in terms of doing the deals. As I mentioned, Vice President Vance was in India last week. I think that he and Modi made some very good progress, so I could see some announcements on India. I could see the contours of a deal with the Republic of Korea coming together, and then we've had substantial talks with the Japanese.
Andrea.
Secretary Besson, just continuing on the path of the sort of like progress. You said yesterday, I think, that it was could happen as early as this week or possibly next week. Can you give us a bit of a timetable? And then I wanted to ask about South Korea specifically. They've said that they probably won't be able to make a comprehensive deal until early July because of their elections. Japan also has elections. And to what extent are domestic factors complicating your efforts? Canada just had an election. Are you seeing that you might have to think about delaying the 90 days?
Well, I would actually take the opposite tack, that I think from our talks that these governments actually want to have the framework of a trade deal done before they go into elections to show that they have successfully negotiated with the United States. So we are finding that they are actually much more keen to come to the table, get this done, and then go home and campaign on it.
Sean.
I'm sorry, did you have a comment on whether something could happen this week or next week? For a deal. So, you said yesterday.
Again, I think that we are very close on India. And in India, just a little inside baseball, India, in a funny way, is easier to negotiate with than many other countries because they have very high tariffs and lots of tariffs. So it's much easier to confront the direct tariffs when as we go through these unfair trade deals that have been put in over decades, that the non-tariff trade barriers can be much more insidious and also harder to detect. So a country like India, which has the posted and ready tariffs, it's much easier to negotiate with them. So I think the India negotiations are moving well.
Thank you, Caroline. A question for you and Secretary Besson. We talk a lot about volatility and uncertainty in the marketplace, and the president has stated all along that he's more concerned about mainstream America, the American worker. You just talked about deregulation and this entire fair trade and reciprocals. What is your message to the American people in terms of letting them get through this disturbance and the outcome being greater and a greater good for the American worker, the American people, the American families?
Really, it's really a three-legged stool in the economic policy. It's trade, it's tax, and it's deregulation. So we are in the midst of addressing, as Caroline said, these long-term trade imbalances. The tax bill is going much better than I would have thought when I took office on January 28th, and that's through President Trump's leadership. That Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune are united, and the tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis. And the other thing that I would note, and back to data, is that the Vanguard, one of the largest money management firms in America, said that over the past 100 days, 97% of Americans haven't done a trade, and in fact, individual investors have held tight while institutional investors have panicked. So individual investors trust, investors trust President Trump.
Megan, in the back.
Can you detail for us exactly what we should expect as far as relief on the auto tariffs front? And then further, Mr. Secretary, should we expect other industries to also get relief the way we've now seen for auto and tech as well?
I'm not going to go into the details of the auto tariff relief, but I can tell you that it will go substantially toward reshoring American auto manufacturing. And again, the goal here is to bring back the high quality industrial jobs to the U.S. President Trump is interested in the jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past. We don't need to necessarily have a booming textile industry like where I grew up again, but we do want to have precision manufacturing and bring that back. And another important, very important function of this that does not get talked about enough is national security. President Trump, his overriding concern and belief is that economic security is national security is economic security. And we saw during COVID that our supply chains got cut off. And we need to bring back a lot of those supply chains, whether it's in semiconductors, medicines, the steel, and we have to onshore those. So it's a combination of making trade free and fair and remedying this gaping national security hole.
Caroline, Mr. Secretary, so contacts I have in the business community say that they're basically frozen for long-term investment because of the uncertainty around tariffs. How long do you think President Trump has to make a deal before there's damage to the economy?
Look, I think that what we're seeing is that business leaders, they've gone into a pause, and I think we're going to give them great certainty on this tax bill. And I think over the next couple of weeks, as I said, we have 18 important trading relationships. We'll put China to the side. 17 are in motion. And then, as I said yesterday, I think there's a very good chance we're going to get this tax bill done. And the tax bill is going to be very powerful for domestic U.S. investment. So what we are going to do, one of the most powerful parts of President Trump's 2017 tax bill was full expensing of equipment. We are going to make that, as President Trump said in his speech to Congress, that will be retroactive to January 20th. The other thing that we are looking to add is full expensing for factories. So bring your factory back. You can fully expense the equipment and the building. We will couple that with deregulation, cheap energy, and regulatory certainty, and that will continue to make the U.S. the greatest destination for domestic and foreign investment.
So you will hear more from the president himself later this evening. He is traveling to Michigan, as you all know. He'll make a stop at the Air Force Base with Governor Whitmer, and then we will head to a rally tonight where you'll hear more from him directly. So we'll see you in Michigan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline.
好，我们看完贝森特在白宫记者会上的相关的发言，内容很多，但是我想啊，他这个发言当中，我个人最感兴趣的重点在哪里呢？不在他说跟多少个国家进行关税谈判，不在说他跟中国的关系怎么样，这里边有个非常重要的问题。贝森特回答了一个大家最关心的问题：川普征收的关税拿来干什么？贝森特直接告诉你，美国联邦政府征收外国的关税，用于本国民众免税的成本。我们知道，川普上任的时候就讲过，美国民众以后小费、加班费还有退休金不征税。那么现在又传出来说，可能会对年收入20万以下的人免所得税，这个是个不得了的政策，它会令到很多美国人的实际的消费能力会大大的增长。 那么当然，这个政策需要有成本，成本哪里来呢？按照贝森特的说法，就是我们除了跟主要的贸易国家达成贸易协定，所以呢大家互惠之外，我们对其他的一些达不成贸易协定的国家呢，我们一定会征收关税。这个关税的收入有可能会令到我们有更多的资源为美国民众减税。那么减多少，减到哪一个范围，这是以后的问题。但是现在呢，贝森特已经公开说，关税政策实施以来，美国联邦政府已经得到了很多收入。那我觉得这个收入可能相当多的程度是来自中国，因为现在对很多国家的这个关税呢，推迟了90天，所以呢，接下来如果有国家跟美国不能达成关税协议的话，那么这些国家将会被征对等关税，所以呢，这个关税收入将会用来为美国民众将来减税提供资源。这个政策的宣示非常重要，因为对于川普的关税政策的支持和反对，对于很多美国民众来说呢，他未必会看得很清楚。但是如果财政部长告诉大家说，关税不但不会伤害美国经济，还会给大家带来这么具体的好处，那么我相信，对于美国民众来说呢，很多人会支持川普的关税政策。那可能大家说最近的联邦数据推出来的不是都是对川普不利吗？贝森特也讲到这个问题，这也非常重要。他说，尽管近期联邦储备系统的调查数据疲弱，但是实际就业和投资数据表现强劲。川普准备在30号搞一个投资表彰会，就是把那些投资美国的那些大咖们找出来，告诉大家这些人都在投资美国，投资美国的总金额达到多少呢？2兆。这是一个因果关系的逻辑展现给大家。为什么这些人愿意投资2兆美元到美国去扩充他们的生意？因为他们对美国的经济前景有信心。如果这些人对美国经济前景有信心的话，一般民众会对美国的经济丧失信心吗？应该不会。如果民众在川普的政策当中又能够得到免税的好处的话，我相信最起码显而易见的得到利益的人会继续支持川普的政策。我觉得贝森特在白宫这次新闻发布会上透露的信息呢，这2点是值得我们关注的。好了，我们今天的评论就到这里，感谢大家的收看，我们下次再见。